And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
You know, it's always great to read those stories about King Arthur and all his knights and all the great things that they did. And if you've read these stories, you know that at the end, King Arthur and Mordred pretty much kill each other. All the knights are dead. A couple are still alive. Yay. What happens after that? Hey, the king is dead. This tells us what to do next. This shows the factions fighting over Britain, and you want to control one of these factions. This is a 2 to 4 player game. It involves placing cubes on a map of Britain and playing some action cards. Here's how it works. So here's the country of Britain, and it's splitting up into different regions, and each region at the beginning of the game has some cubes randomly put in it, except for there's 3 starting regions. Those have 2 cubes of that color for sure. So up here, you'll always start with at least 2 Scotsmen, at least 2 Welsh, and at least 2 of the Romano-British here. And the rest are put out randomly. Each player is also going to have 2 cubes randomly pulled from a bag and placed in front of them. Now, players have 8 cards that they are going to be using over the course of the game. And we're going to start the game out with Region 1, resolve that region, and go on until all the regions have been resolved. Now, when a region is resolved, players can play one of the cards from their hand, or they can pass. Once you pass, you're not out of a round, but once everybody passes in a row, then we stop, we will score that region, flip the card over, go to the next region. Once you place a card, then that's it. You can only use each card once for the whole game, which means you have 8 cards. You have 8 things you're doing over the course of this game. Now, when we score a region, we're going to look at the cubes in that region. So here, we'll look at the region. There's 3 Scots, and there's only 1 of the Romanos. So we're going to put a Scot control token there, and then all these get put back in the common stock. Players can't place cubes there for the rest of the game. At the end of the game, whichever of these factions has the most symbols out on the board, control tokens, they win control of Britain, and whoever has the most cubes of that faction wins. Although if there's a tie, then you look at the second biggest faction, who has the most cubes of that faction, and so on and so forth. So what do the cards do? Well, some cards let you add cubes of a color next to a spot that already has a control marker. So here's Scots, so I could say I'm going to take 2 blues and add them to this region. Again, you can do anything to any region that has not yet been scored. And here's one for the Welsh and then one for the Romano-British. This lets you switch 1 cube from one region with a cube from another region. This one lets you switch 1 cube for 2 cubes. This one lets you add 3 cubes to the board. So I might say I'll add a yellow there, a red there, and a blue there. You got 2 of those. And then this one here lets you switch the scoring of 2 regions. And when you're done, you can put a crown token on one of the 2 regions. That region can't be switched for the remainder of the game. Now, if there's ever a tie when scoring happens, well, then the Norman invasion comes, the invaders, and you're going to put one of their tokens in that region. If there's ever 4 of those tokens on the board, then the invaders have conquered England, and everyone's going to score based on sets that they have. Whoever has the most sets of red, blue, and yellow is the winner of the game. And that's it. That's basically how you play. There's a variant where you can have loyalist troops to the evil King Mordred, and these can be out there, and there's a possibility that if one of them wins control of a region, the game will also end quickly. That's pretty much how you play. If you're playing with 4 players, you'll play on teams of 2, and 3, every man for himself. Well, The King is Dead is an intriguing game. Now, when I first played this, someone said to me, oh, you need to play it with 3 players. And I played it with the different varying amounts of players, and actually 3 players is where it's at. 4 players is a team game, and it's kind of odd to be working with someone. You're basically trying to do the same thing. It's okay, but 3-player was really good. And there's kind of a dearth of good 3-player games. This is really intriguing because you have 8 actions over the course of the game. Now, I should have mentioned, when I was going over the rules, and I didn't make it clear, that when you play a card, you don't have to do the action. You don't have to do all the action. You might say put out 3 cubes and you only have 2 to put out. But when you're done with that action, from anywhere on the board, you can take a cube off and put that cube in front of you, which is how you win the game. You have these cubes of the right colors in front of you. So you're going to get at most 8 cubes over the course of the game. The question is, when do you play these cards? What cubes do you take? You can even take a cube that you just switched or moved or whatever. When you take a cube, you're also affecting how a region is going to score. Now, there is this whole shoot the moon thing going here, where you can try to, when the Saxons invade, you can try to be like, or the Normans, I'm sorry, when they invade, to have sets and try to win that way. But getting that to happen requires some deft maneuvering, and usually it will only happen if another player also might be going for that strategy. I have not yet seen it happen. But getting one of the factions to win, of course, but how do you get the faction you want to win while still maintaining control of that faction? There's some intriguing back and forth, but again, you only have 8 cards. How many of those cards do you use on round 1? I mean, you literally could play, not all your cards, because 3 of the cards require there to be control tokens on the board, but you literally could play most of your cards in the first couple turns and then essentially sit there and watch what happens the rest of the game. Is that a strategy? Should you wait to the end to use your cards? Well, you can, but as the game goes by, where you can play your cards becomes more constricted. So this is kind of a balancing act. Play cards quickly or wait a little bit, but don't wait too long. And I found that to be a really fascinating little thing. What I like about The King is Dead here, the rule book says that it's 30 to 45 minutes. Once you know what you're doing, we're talking 20 to 30 minutes. This is not a long game at all. Now, yes, it doesn't look that great. The map's a little boring. You're using cubes. The cards are okay. They're not that great of quality. And I mean, I think the whole thing could have used a nice graphical overhaul, but the game itself is sound. It's really good. As I said, it's really great with 3, although it does work with 2. The variant, I play with the Mordred variant or not, that works. You don't need it. I think the base game is fine as it is. I just find it kind of this weird balancing act because it's a typical area control game, but you can only make so many moves. And while I'm not usually a big fan of games that kind of constrict you to that many moves, because this game is so short, it works really well and almost becomes a little chess-like in nature. So it's certainly one I think people should check out. I didn't think when I saw The King is Dead, I was like, okay, The King is Dead, whatever. But this actually has some interesting things that I haven't seen in other games before, so try it out. The King is Dead. Long live the King. Dice Tower Judgment approved!
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door.
There.